Please note that tonight's episode features references to suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Episode 8. It's a crisp autumn day, and you're sitting beside the stone marker at the top of a rugged hill in the desolate area of Scotland's Highlands known as the Cairngorms. You've poured the last of your coffee, laced with a little bit whiskey, from the slim flask into the plastic lid which doubles as a small cup. As you take a sip, you smile and savour the view. The clear air and unspoiled panorama gives you a perfect view of the surrounding hills. This remote area has remained virtually untouched by human hands for hundreds of thousands of years, and could easily be mistaken for another timeless world, like those where dragons still sleep beneath the hills and strange creatures exist. It's an alluring thought, but it's just a fantasy. Feeling rested and warmed by the drink, you place the lid in your flask and slip it into your rucksack, stand up and adjust the straps. You would sit for longer, but the October sun is already sinking fast and will soon vanish behind the jagged silhouette of a nearby peak. As you begin your descent, you are careful on the boulder-strewn track. To twist an ankle on the top of the second highest hill in the UK could easily prove fatal. It has for some. So, using your walking poles to steady your balance, you wind your way steadily down from the top. You've only been walking for an hour or so, when the fog slowly begins to form around you in the cooling air. It seeps strangely out of the craggy gullies, like a ghost from a tomb. You decide that you don't want to get lost in the fog, and so you begin to increase your pace. And that's when you hear the sound. Initially, you mistakenly think it's just the echo of your own footsteps bouncing off the rocky surfaces around you. But that doesn't sound quite right. You stop for a moment and listen. Hearing nothing else, you set off on your descent once more. And that's when you hear it again. It's the sound of footsteps, which are almost matching your own, but not quite. Even before you slowly turn round, you find yourself overwhelmed by a sudden sense of dread. And then you do turn, and you see it. The large, ragged figure is standing watching you from several metres away. Even in the dying light, you can see that the figure is much larger than a normal human. It has long grey hair and thin limbs. You instinctively begin to step slowly backwards, but the figure begins to move, descending the slope towards you. Panic kicks in. No longer being careful with your steps, you increase your pace as you take stumbling lunges away from the creature. And yet with every step you take, you can hear another, mirroring your own. You dare not stop to turn around, but you're certain the crunching steps sound much closer now, and there's another noise too. The sound of rasping breathing. You glance helplessly from side to side, hoping to see any other sign of life, but there's nothing but rocky desolation in every direction. No one around, no one to help. And the sound is closer now. The laboured breathing is just over your shoulder. Every fibre of your body is telling you to run, but the path up ahead is strewn with boulders. Eventually, you accept that you cannot outrun the creature, and your only option is to turn and fight for your life. With the stench of the creature filling your senses, you grip your walking poles and spin around. To find nothing. The path behind you is empty, and the only sign of movement is the careless fog drifting lazily around the peak of the hill. Whatever had been following you had vanished back into the fog-shrouded slopes, waiting for the next time. I'm Norman Brown, and you're listening to the Scary Scotland podcast. In tonight's episode, Peak Fear, we explore some of the strange encounters and experiences hikers have had in the Scottish hills. So take off your boots, put down your rucksack, make yourself comfortable, and let's go explore the darkness in the hills. The rugged and remote Scottish Highlands have long been a source of awe and wonder, with their sweeping glens, misty peaks and ancient folklore. Over the centuries, These majestic mountains have become the setting for numerous accounts of strange sightings and eerie encounters. Whether it's spectral figures seen on the slopes or unexplained lights and eerie sounds echoing from the hills, the strange stories from Scotland's peaks continue to captivate and mystify all those who hear them. Stories relating to one of Scotland's most famous mysteries has been shared amongst the hill climbing community for more than a century. Ben Macdui, the highest peak in the Cairngorms and the second highest in Scotland, is not just famous for its stunning vistas and splendid isolation, it's also home to one of the most enduring mysteries of the Scottish Highlands. The Big Grey Man, or Ferlia Mor in Gaelic, is described as a tall, shadowy humanoid figure with an otherworldly presence. The first notable account of him came from respected mountaineer and scientist John Norman Colley in 1925. Colley recounted a chilling experience from 1891 when he was alone near the summit of Ben Macdui. He claimed to have heard repeated heavy crunching footsteps behind him, though no one was visible whenever he looked. Terrified, and despite the risk of injury, he quickly fled the mountain. Many who have since claimed encounters with the Big Grey Man report similar sensations, an overwhelming sense of dread, the sound of unseen footsteps, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. Since the time of the first sighting, many climbers and walkers have come forward to share their unsettling experiences of this phenomenon. They recount the eerie footsteps, but many of them also describe a figure they have seen on the hillside, larger than a normal human, grey in appearance, ragged in its attire, and always seen close to the summit. Throughout the years, there have been many attempts to find a satisfactory explanation to the sightings on the hill. Many accounts refer to a figure which, although larger than a human, is still human-like in its movement and its appearance. Though it has never been known to attack any hill walker, the appearance of the Big Grey Man is often accompanied by feelings of fear and dread too. From a mythological perspective, the Big Grey Man sits comfortably alongside a Celtic cousin. In the mountainous area of northern Wales, ancient tales tell of Brenin Lleiad, which translates as the Grey King. He's also known as the Monarch of the Mist. He's another imposing figure who is said to reside at mountain tops and is often described as being cloaked in mist, just like our own Big Grey Man. Theories aiming to explain the phenomenon of the Big Grey Man range from the paranormal to the scientific. Some believe the figure is a spectral guardian guiding walkers away from treacherous areas or dangerous weather as it descends on the hill. Another theory is that the Big Grey Man is an elusive cryptid, a creature akin to the Yeti. This hypothesis is perhaps not without rational basis. For example, the areas associated with Yeti sightings are mountainous, but often much more snowy than Scotland, and therefore the Yeti in such areas is described as being white to benefit from environmental camouflage, whereas the figure seen on Ben Macdui is always described as grey, but that might be because although the hill does experience a covering of snow in winter months, the area of Ben Macdui is mostly a rocky dome covered in granite boulders, which vary in size from millimetres to metres, and the colour of this stone is grey, meaning a creature could easily blend in or apparently vanish there, if it too were the same colour. Others suggest it could be a psychological phenomenon, resulting from infrasound as the wind funnels through the hills and valleys, or hallucinations induced by isolation and harsh weather conditions. However, a much more logical explanation is a fascinating phenomenon known as the Brocken spectre, where a person's shadow is projected onto misty clouds, and which may also contribute to the alleged sightings. For those of us who have experienced this optical illusion, it's easy to understand why it might be mistaken for a spiritual experience. If you are walking towards a misty or foggy area in the hills with the sun low behind you, it can cast your shadow onto the clouds like a large projection onto a shifting screen made of vapour. This disquieting effect is that you are encountering a spectral giant ahead of you, often ringed by a halo of light. Of course, this would only explain the appearance, and not the sound of footsteps which seem to follow many travellers in the hill. But the Big Grey Man is not the only strange phenomenon found in the more remote parts of Scotland. Throughout the Scottish Highlands, reports of strange and inexplicable lights have been prevalent for centuries. Often described as will-o'-the-wisps or ghost lights, These luminous orbs are said to appear over marshes and remote hillsides. In the mountains, similar lights have been witnessed hovering over ridges or moving erratically through the night sky. The locations, movement and appearance of these lights are distinctly different from the normal lights seen in remote places, such as those of forestry vehicles or mountain rescue teams. In addition to that, the strange lights have been seen all over the Highlands, including in many already notable places such as Glencoe and the fairy pools on Skye, where the strange orbs of light are believed to signify the spirits of those killed in the massacre or the glow of the fair folk, both of which we discussed in episodes 4 and 6 respectively. Some scientists attribute these phenomena to some as yet unidentified forms of bioluminescence, like that of fireflies or anglerfish. Other scientific explanations refer to the potential ignition of gases like methane over marshy ground or in the valleys. Whilst in many mountainous regions where marsh gases are less prevalent, atmospheric conditions, reflections, and even rare plasma events known as ball lightning are cited as potential explanations. But as yet, there is little evidence to confirm such theories, and a supernatural explanation remains much more appealing to many who view these lights as the spirits of the departed, or as otherworldly entities. Another source of mysterious encounters in the Scottish hills are haunted bothies, and these seem much more disturbing than lights on a hillside or a man in the mist. Bothies are abandoned buildings. Their name comes from the Gaelic word bethan, which means hut, even though in most cases they are stone structures which had once been cottages, farmhouses or barns. Bothies can be found scattered throughout the Highlands, where they provide a welcome but basic refuge for hikers and climbers against the elements. You can imagine how reassuring it would be to find a sturdy and watertight structure in the middle of a storm on a remote hillside. Whilst they do not feature electricity and water, many bothies have a basic fireplace and sometimes candles to provide a degree of comfort. However, several of the bothies dotting the landscape have reputations for being haunted. One of the most notorious is the Correr Bothy, located in the Lerrig Grew Pass near the previously mentioned Ben Macdui. Many visitors who have spent an uncomfortable night in this remote shelter have reported hearing disembodied voices, footsteps in the night, and experiencing a palpable sense of dread. This feeling is compounded by the fact that in such remote places, and often in hostile weather, there's no option to run away and escape the torment without facing further certain danger. Accounts of such eerie experiences could be dismissed as urban legends. However, in the digital age, brave individuals are now using technology to visit bothies and record the strange events in these isolated buildings. Even the BBC programme Uncanny repeatedly investigated a particularly unsettling case of a potentially haunted bothy known as Lulybelt. This site is located in the hills near Kinlochleven, where in 1973 two young climbers had spent a terrifying night cowering in their sleeping bags, trying to shut out the sound of some unseen force thrashing around and stomping in the darkness. It would be an experience which would have a lasting impact on one of the men for more than half a century. The phenomenon was linked to the historical suicide of a previous owner in an adjacent barn. Now, this tragic detail also connects Lulybelt to one of the most famous of all cases of supernatural bothies, which involves a building on the slopes of Ben Alder. Sitting on the shores of Loch Ericht, this is one of the most remote bothies in the Central Highlands. It has been uninhabited since 1918, and it's also plagued by strange tales of traditional music and voices emanating from empty rooms and of objects being thrown about by invisible forces. Local legends blame these events on the suicide of the building's original owner, a man called McCook, who'd worked as a gillie assisting local hunting and fishing parties. Allegedly, McCook, who would have lived a solitary existence, hung himself from the frame of his own front door. It's interesting that both of these places, which feature strange experiences and an oppressive atmosphere, are linked by a similar tragic history. However, skeptics might argue that there's nothing surprising about this. After all, the oppressive atmosphere which visitors find so disturbing in these places may simply be a result of the desolate locations, and for someone living in such an isolated place, with long winters and a harsh life, this may eventually have impacted on their mental health. But whilst this could account for the dark atmosphere and history, it doesn't explain the other experiences of visitors to these places. While in some cases, the eerie experiences reported in bothies can be attributed to natural acoustics. In the same way as hills are free from light pollution, allowing a greater appreciation of the stars at night, so too are bothies free from noise pollution, meaning that visitors are likely to hear sounds that they would not normally notice. For example, hikers in a bothy may be mistaking the sound of wildlife, such as stags echoing through valleys, or curious animals being drawn to their building by candlelight and the aroma of cooking food, for something supernatural. And yet, the consistency of such stories, including, in many cases, furniture and objects moving around on their own, means that the only way to know for certain is to spend a night in one of these bothies yourself. But not all mysteries on the hills are so harmless. While Scotland's mountains are beautiful and beguiling, they are also unforgiving. Over the years, numerous hikers have gone missing in the hills under mysterious circumstances. The average number equates to 1 per year. Undoubtedly, many disappearances are due to accidents or sudden changes in weather, and often a body will be recovered months or perhaps years later. But not always. In certain instances, search parties have found campsites and personal belongings, but no trace of the missing individuals. Relatively recently, in 2022, an experienced hiker and bushcraft practitioner headed out in mild weather to walk a pre-planned route in Sutherland. He never arrived at his destination, and after 3 days was officially declared missing. Eventually, 3 years after the disappearance, a rucksack belonging to the man was discovered at the edge of a loch, but no other sign of him. In a land steeped in mythology, it's not surprising that some people attribute these disappearances to supernatural causes, including abduction by spirits or other entities. But skeptics will quickly point to the treacherous terrain and rapidly changing weather, which can quickly disorientate and overwhelm even experienced hikers. Regardless of the cause, people continue to vanish. And for those of you who have listened to previous episodes, you will know that Scotland is awash with tales of vampires, fairies, aliens and cannibals, so the supernatural will always provide an explanation for the inexplicable. Clearly, the Scottish mountains are steeped in myth and mystery, from the legendary Big Grey Man of Ben Macdui to ghostly lights and spooky bothies. These tales of strange encounters continue to inspire awe and intrigue. Whether these stories are the result of natural phenomena, psychological effects, or something otherworldly, they remain an enduring part of Scotland's rich folklore. For those who venture into the Highlands, the line between myth and reality often feels tantalisingly thin, inviting us to wonder what truly lies beyond the mist-shrouded peaks of the Scottish hills. I'm Norman Brown. Thank you for sharing your time with me. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and rate the show on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or whichever platform you use. A new episode will drop every fortnight, so there'll be many more scary stories to explore. Tonight's episode, Peak Fear, featured information from strangeoutdoors.com, adventure.com, and ohwhatanight.co.uk. Music was by Alfred Grapestra of A Creative Journey and PG Richmond of Creative Audio. Additional sounds were supplied by the Free Sound community, all of whom you will find amongst the kind contributors on Pixabay. As for you, the listener, I appreciate your company. Stay scared.